here. Just kidding.
All right. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Our first applicant this evening, our first interview will begin now that we have quorum. We will be asking you 10 questions. We have about 55 minutes. I will go ahead and raise my hand after 5 minutes of response for each, knowing that you still have about 30 seconds left. We will just rotate asking questions, and at the end, we'll have a little bit of time for you to ask us some questions as well. So if you could just introduce yourself to start off.
Well, at first, I want to say that it would be remiss not to.
Just move your mic a little bit
so
closer.
sorry.
Thank you.
It would be remiss not to express my sorrow and my condolences in the loss of Terry Caldwell Johnson. Those are going to be huge shoes to fill, and she played such a huge role in our community. So I just wanted to make sure that I expressed that she will definitely be a hard role to fill. My name is Ruth Thompson, and I have lived in Des Moines for about 11 or 12 years now. I am an employee for Polk County. I have been engaged in the community in various volunteer efforts for as long as we've been here. And I'm very politically engaged, and I definitely see our school system being just kind of beset from every direction, and feel like it's really important to become engaged.
Thank you. All right, we're going to start with our first question this evening, which is, Ruth, what motivated you to apply for this school board position?
Well, kind of the attacks that have been taking place on public schools for the last couple years. It's been a hard several years for public schools, and I just look back on my education, and kind of the thing that I value most, besides kind of the people that I love in my life, is my education. And I just want our public schools to be a safe place where where kids can come and learn about the world and learn about where they fit in the world.
Thank you.
All right, Ruth. What do you feel are the largest challenges facing our school district, and how would your appointment to the school board help the board address these challenges?
I think that there are both external and internal challenges. I mean, internal not to the board, but to the district and to the state. Certainly, there's a definite lack of resources and all sorts of problems that more money would go a long way to solve. And I'm not certain I'm not certain, unless I had a really big checkbook, how that would be solved by little old me. But I do have a big mouth. And kind of the more, I see hateful rhetoric coming in from the top, and against people who look differently and who speak differently and who eat different foods and who love differently and who think differently. And it just makes it that much easier for those things to filter into our children and into our schools. And I just don't think that there's no room for that in our schools. And that's something that I do feel that I could play a role in addressing, and that I would really like to. And those don't take much money. I think that greater outreach into the community, and I will perhaps talk more about that later on, getting out into the community and letting people know our faces and letting people know that we have an ear that will listen to them and take back their thoughts and ideas is really important, and that's a role that I would love to play.
Thank you.
My three, okay. Ruth, how do you plan to collaborate with other board members? I should also just remind you, just so you know, I think we're recording this, obviously.
Fair.
Okay. How do you plan to collaborate with other board members and community members to make informed decisions?
I've chaired a couple of boards. I've served on many boards, And a couple of times I've worked for organizations that were run by boards, and so not my first rodeo. I do think that it always works better if the board of directors works as a team and can agree, even, when they don't always agree. But, once a decision is made, it's all good. I think that, and that's kind of the huge, I do think that my approach, and again, would be to go out into my district, invite my community, the players in my community, the families and the stakeholders, to come and let them know the issues that we're struggling with, and hearing from them, do you have solutions? Tell me what the pros are, tell me what the cons are, and bringing back their thoughts and their fears, and maybe they have better ideas than we do, and bringing that back to the board, and letting them know that, hearing them, telling them what I'm going to take back to the board, but also letting them know that I'm one of six, or one of, I don't know, is it six, seven? And that, and it's kind of that don't trust me, track me. But I think transparency is paramount, and encouraging them to engage with the school board by, watching on the internet or coming to school board meetings, but so that they can understand how we struggle, and that we don't just make decisions off the cuff, but to see how decisions are made. And if I have bad news to deliver, or something that they're not going to be too happy to hear about, be brave and go tell them immediately.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question for Ms. Ruth. Hello, it's good to see you. What do you see as the role of a school board member in holding the superintendent accountable for achieving the goals while honoring our guardrails?
Right. So, and I have to admit that I have the worst time remembering the word guardrails. I just want to call it everything but guardrails. First of all, I think that we have to remember that we do make decisions as a group. I think that my first approach would be to look at the goal, look at if there's a deviation from the goal, look at the goal. Is the goal achievable? Was it a good goal to start with? Was there a real deviation from the goal? And why, if possible? And then, then the second thing would be to look at the guardrails, bless you, to look at the guardrails. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. And did the superintendent have all the tools that they needed to get the job done? Was there enough? Was it too vague? Was it too restrictive? Although looking at the guardrails, they're not too restrictive. And trying to see if does the goal need to be tinkered with? Does the guardrail need some more work? Is there a problem with that sort of thing? And if not, then as a group, we decide what action needs to be taken. And then if there is action that needs to be taken, I don't know what the policy is here, but I would say that we empower the chair or whoever's supposed to take action to take whatever action is necessary.
Thank you. The fifth question is, how do you envision engaging with parents, students, and community stakeholders to ensure their voices are heard in the decision-making process?
So I kind of touched on that a little bit. I spent years working on rural community development in the areas of healthcare and housing, and that meant I spent lots and lots of nights in little communities at helping people to engage in public deliberation, perhaps for the first time in their lives. And one of my favorite things is to just get a group of people together and say, here, tell me what you like about your town. Tell me what you don't like about your town. And I think that the same questions could be posed about, perhaps not about the school system, but about, the issues that, as I said earlier, about the issues that we're trying to address, and helping them work through those sorts of things. how would you solve this problem? What are things that you like that we could build upon? And spending enough time doing that in a meaningful way, you can bring back a plan for growth or a good roadmap for moving things forward, at least in that district. And I don't want to jump ahead for questions, but then, I think you have to come back and overlay that with like responses from all the districts and from the district as well.
Thank you. And I believe that we have another board member joining us virtually. Thank you for joining us. We are on question 6. And Anna, I'll let you ask that question.
All right. Excuse me. Can you provide an example of a difficult decision that you have made, that you had to make in a leadership role, and how did you approach it?
And can I use my notes or no?
Of course. Of course.
Okay. So before I moved here from Illinois a bit ago, and the last job that I had in Illinois, I was the executive director of a small not-for-profit advocacy organization, and we had a teeny tiny budget. We only had 2 funders, and both of them, I think, were in some shape or fashion the state. And it wasn't a huge budget, but we had a huge office in a building that was just dilapidated, and our rent was really, really high. I was just kind of like, when I was new, I was looking at the budget and trying to figure out how can we shave some of these expenses so that we can spend more money on advocacy work. And immediately I was just looking at, we were paying what for this building? And so I talked to the board of directors and kind of got a little pushback there. Yeah, we know that the rent, but a lot of people had an emotional connection to that space because they had operated out of somebody's basement for a long time. And it took them a long time to be able to have an office at all. And so reluctantly they said, well, snoop around, see what you can find. And so I did. And then the next thing I did was talk with the landlord. And we had rented from him for a number of years, and he was not even a little bit interested in letting us out of our lease, even though the building was just not in great shape. So.
You have plenty of time, Ruth.
Okay. I went to look at some other properties, and I found the perfect little space on the square that overlooks the Springfield courthouse where Abraham Lincoln and Obama made speeches. It's just a lovely place, and there were some other organizations that did like work that would be our neighbors. And the rent was about half what we were paying at that spot. So I went back and spoke with the landlord and talked with him, not about us needing to move, but about if we're going to stay here, you've got to do some work on this building. And he was furious, and he was quite elderly, and I knew that And so I just let that go for a minute. And then one day I just decided, and I've never done anything like this, so I walked down to the courthouse and went into the inspection office, and I was like, what do you know about this building? And this was right next to a railroad track. And I found out that the back half of the building was condemned, and that they weren't really crazy about the front half of the building. I called the landlord back, and that actually had made arrangements for his son to join us on the call in case I gave him a heart attack or something. And I laid out, I said, I know that the back half of this building is condemned, and I want out of this lease. And he would, I just thought that they were both going to jump through the phone at me. But they did finally agree that if I would just go away quietly, they would let me out of the lease, which meant then I had to go back to the board and tell them what I'd done. And so I did go back with a revised budget. And I said, look, here's what, if we get out of this building this year, every year we would save this much money, which we could divert into this type of advocacy. And so they allowed me to do it. We got out of that awful lease and into a nice space, and were able to do a lot of good for the people that we were trying to serve.
Thank you.
Ruth, can you provide an example of a, oh.
Yep.
Difficult. Is the same? Yeah, sorry. So go to question 8. Okay. I was like, I know I was listening. I just, okay. How will you ensure transparency and accountability in your role as a school board member?
So I did address that a little bit. I think it's really important for interaction between board members and their districts, and being out in the community often, and going to neighborhood meetings, going to wherever the community gathers. I know that lots of folks in my district don't go to neighborhood association meetings or whatever, but they go to church and they go to ball games and they go, see their kids do sports and stuff. And I think it's important to be present there and to let them know who you are and what you're about, and then make the opportunity often to have meetings with them, and let them know what we're talking about, what are issues that, what are our victories and what are things that we're worried about. And then again, encouraging them to engage with us and letting them know that our meetings are available to them to watch online, or that they're welcome to come in and sit in on a board meeting. And that's kind of been my approach with anything I've ever done in working with the public.
Thank you.
Will Patrick go at some point, or,
We can cover for him.
so I do 9? All right. Can you share a time when you challenged the status quo in a previous role, and what was the situation, your approach, and the outcome?
So I challenge status quo a little bit. I think that, and this is not to say that I do this all by my little self, but I serve on the Access Advisory Board for the City of Des Moines, and I take that very seriously. And you might have noticed that they, from time to time, do a little bit of work on Fluor.
Really?
Yeah, and I happen to go up and down Fluor every day, a couple times on my way back and forth to work. And I have observed women with strollers pushing their strollers out in the street because there's no sidewalk on parts of it. And I've seen teenagers carrying their skateboard, walking on the ledge in the middle of the, where the plants are and things, because there's no sidewalk. And it's terrifying. And I'm getting and actually at the time this was going on, I just had knee replacement surgery and I was using a cane, so the optics were amazing. But we get to look at all the plans for the city before they go anywhere, I guess. And we talked about the fact that there were sidewalks on one side that were broken, that would go for a while and then they would stop. And then there were no sidewalks on the other side at all. And so we decided, and this had never happened before, that we unanimously voted against those plans to go anywhere. And I was told by the staff who represents whoever draws those plans up and everything, well, you do realize that you're just an advisory board, right? And that just kind of made me a little bit angry. So, and my city council person knows me so well. So the next council meeting I went, and I was the vice chair, so I felt pretty confident that I could speak for the committee. And I said, I told them what our concerns were, and I said that this committee voted unanimously not to send these plans forward. And I told them why, and got some silly answers from some of our council people. And my council person spoke up in support, and I think one other person did, and then the others voted against it. And on the way out, my council person said, don't be upset about this. This happens all the time. And we talk behind the scenes and things happen. And apparently, a deal was made so that the person who made the most ridiculous statement of all got what he wanted in his ward, and so kind of withdrew his objections to the project. And if you will notice, that section of floor now will have sidewalks on both sides. And I am extremely proud of that. And I know that it's due to Josh Mandelbaum, but my big mouth spurred him to action. So there it is.
Thank you. What questions do you have for us, Ruth?
Obviously, I'm just kind of a little bit curious about how the rest of this will play out.
With regards to the process of selection, we have a total of 3 interviews today. We will have 3 interviews tomorrow, and then we will deliberate tomorrow as a board. We will make a decision tomorrow, and then the individual that is selected by the board will be sworn in at our next regular business meeting, which is April 16th. So that is the remainder of the
process.
The process.
Okay. Well, I think that those are all that I don't really have any questions other than that. I just want to thank you so much for allowing me to come and kind of lay out my really straight. I'm kind of methodical, and so lay out my kind of robot head at your feet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank
We
you, Ms.
appreciate
Ruth.
your
Appreciate
interest
it.
in the position, and we will let you know as soon as we know the decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you all so much for the hard work that you all do. I know that this is probably the most thankless job I know it's not, I guess it is in governance. So thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you,
I've
Ms.
just got to ask, though, where are you from originally? Okay, so West Virginia to Illinois? And then what brought you to Iowa?
My husband wanted to get his PhD at Iowa State.
Great,
So, yeah.
thank you. Okay, take care.
Bye, Miss Ruth.
All right, Nick.
We ready?
Shortly, yes. We've got about a minute before we begin. I just want to give you some logistics and information. We are recording the session. Your mic is now on. We will be asking you 10 questions. I will be keeping time and raising my hand at about 5 minutes. So you're welcome to go beyond that, but just want, if you do see me raising my hand, that is an indicator of you're at the 5-minute mark. We will offer you time at the end to ask questions of us as well. And then before we get started, if you'll just say your name, who you are for the record, and then we can get started with our questions. Do you have any questions before we begin?
No, very clear. I appreciate it. Nick Linhart, 3500 Southwest 29th Street, Des Moines, Iowa, 50321.
Thank you, Nick. And just to let you know, we do have Board Member Patrick Dix online with us. Patrick, are you able to hear us okay?
I am. Hi, Nick. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Patrick. Appreciate it.
All right, and we are going to kind of just take turns asking questions, but I will get us started. What motivated you to apply for this school board position?
Yeah, I'll start on kind of the personal journey, right? So I have 3 primary reasons what motivated me for being here tonight. And their names are Kingston, Riker, and Colton. They're in Des Moines Public Schools. Kingston goes to Brody, Riker and Colton go to Jefferson. And it's been a fantastic journey that I've been able to watch and grow. But one thing about me that you might not know, my wife and I made a very conscious decision about 9 years ago to move from the suburbs because I'm originally from Kansas City. I didn't know what I was getting into when we moved into Des Moines. So we were in the suburbs. We made a conscious decision that we did not want to raise our kids and have our kids go to school in the suburbs. So we moved our family into Des Moines, specifically so that our kids could go to Des Moines Public Schools. My wife is an alumni at Des Moines Public Schools. She's got a lot of brothers and sisters that are alumni. It was incredibly important for me to be able to walk the walk, especially when I worked for Des Moines. So funny story about that, I'll never forget when the realtor goes, hey, we don't see a lot of paths where people move from the burbs to the south side, so maybe you'll start a trend here. And there's a little bit of that growing, but that's the primary reason is my 3 kids. The other reasons of why I'm here is in my formative years, I was largely raised by my grandparents. I come from very, very modest means, and the way out or the way up for me personally was through the educational system in Kansas City. And my grandparents instilled that into me. My grandfather had a 7th grade education, and he instilled from day one that your primary job and objective is to go to school, do the best you possibly can in school, and apply yourself to the fullest extent you possibly can. And I carry that with me. And I really feel with being on the Reimagining Education Committee that I'm very fortunate to be a part of, there's a lot of headwinds and problems that are facing Des Moines Public Schools. And I feel with my unique background, my financial acumen, my experiences with the district, I think I can positively contribute to work through some really, really tough situations.
Thank you.
All right. Annie Campos, I've never met you before, so I'm glad to meet you and welcome.
Thank you.
What do you feel are the largest challenges facing our school district, and how would your appointment to the school board help the board in addressing those challenges?
Yeah, it's very nice to meet you as well, and thanks for the question. So one of the biggest challenges, I'll start with more of the financial component, is we have declining enrollment. There's no getting around that, and we've got a different competitive set than we might have had 5 or 10 years ago with the exemption and the abolishment of the diversity plan. So we've got much more open enrollment out than we've probably ever had for a significant amount of years. And so I think that is one of the biggest challenges that facing us is that we've got declining enrollment, which means that based on how the funding formula works, we've got declining revenue and we've got an aging infrastructure. We've got a lot of headwinds faced against us. But also, one of the biggest things in my personal opinion is our perception. We have a perception problem. And so I'll share a story about my son, Kingston, who's at Brody. And I think this perception is actually a strength of Des Moines Public Schools, and there might be a way to turn it into a funding solution. My son was in several classes where he had Swahili refugees within his class who spoke no English, none whatsoever. But the teacher continued to teach like those children were just like my son, who has been in Des Moines since he was born. He's only been in an English environment. So those children had a significant uphill battle. And so when it came time for my son to really get an experience of what life was like, that resonated to me. That's why we made the right decision years ago to move into Des Moines. My son now understands that the world is much, much bigger than 50321. It's much, much bigger than District 4. There's a whole interconnectedness amongst all of us. But the opportunity that I think we have, and I know the district has worked on this in the past, is we have to uplift that story that you can't look solely at the student outcomes based on the Iowa assessment of basic skills. And you can't look at it from my son, who's been English only for 13 or 14 years on the planet, where you've got an individual who's been here for 2 weeks and has had no formal incorporation within the assessments. So naturally, there needs to be some form of recognition that our population of ELL students is larger than most populations of districts in Iowa outside of Des Moines. And so when you parallel that to how other industries work, there are specific criteria that give additional funding. And I know we've been working on that, but I think where I can really help is start to illuminate some of those stories, tie it into the funding, show the shortcomings and the gaps, and use it as, that's one of the strengths of Des Moines Public Schools. If we're raising kids to experience the entire world, not just a little portion of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Either one of you can.
Oh, sorry. I know, I wasn't sure. We started in a weird order.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. How do you plan to collaborate with other board members and community members to make informed decisions?
Yeah, so personally, I'm a big believer that feedback's a gift. And through my experiences within the community, whether that's at the president of the PTA or on the Reimagining Education Committee or setting up a gifted and talented parent advisory group, I've always tried to make sure that I'm listening and constantly trying to evolve. So there are a lot of mechanisms that Terry put in place on the South Side that are phenomenal, whether it's through neighborhood associations, whether it's being plugged in. Those all make complete sense, and you'd want to continue to go that path. The other component that I think we could do is really start to look at what is a South Side town hall, what is a South Side virtual town hall, and what is my social presence and ability to be reached mean to people in the community, because I want to make sure that we're hearing from every single member of the community and also explaining why we make the decisions that we make. You can also tell from some of the, if you've had a chance to read some of the recommendation letters, that's a pretty reoccurring theme that I'm fortunate enough to get in my past of, I do believe in a lot of collaboration and feedback.
What do you see as the role of the school board member in holding the superintendent accountable for achieving the goals while honoring our guardrails?
Yeah, this question I had to ponder quite a bit because it's absolutely the right decision to set up a strategic plan and a strategic vision and put the goals and the guardrails in place. The thing that I think we all would bestow it upon ourselves as board members is, are those broken down in a manner that they're actionable and that we can hold individuals accountable to? And so there's an art form that I've experienced throughout my career where you can set a 5-year path forward and have goals for every single student within the district, but then also being able to break those down into much smaller chunks that we could have ongoing monitoring and candidly really engaging conversations to determine maybe the pathway that we thought was the best for these students isn't actually the right pathway. And so those goals and guardrails are living, breathing things. They're not meant to just be set once, put on a shelf, and admired. They're meant to be lived and talked about and flourished and asked some really significantly hard questions of each other to ensure we're getting the right outcomes for every kid.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
How do you envision engaging with parents, students, and community stakeholders to ensure their voices are heard in the decision-making process?
Yeah, if I can, I'll share a couple of experiences that I've done over the last couple of years with my own students and within the schools, within my students, and see if that's relatable enough. The first one was there's a large number of students at Jefferson Elementary that after school, they go home. And a fair amount of those students probably go home to themselves. And so one of the things we really started to problem solve with our administrator in there was, how could we create an after-school program that was at no cost to any child? The teachers would be willing to lead it, community members would be willing to lead it, and we'd be able to stand something up that would keep students engaged, not just from 7:45 to 2:40, but until 4, 5 o'clock, so that mom, dad, grandma, aunts and uncles, whoever was responsible for the child could come pick them up. So that's something that I'm particularly proud of. And we did a fundraising campaign. This all came from private donations within the community to set it up and ensure that we had long-term success. And that program's still going on. It's also started to lead to serious conversations about maybe it's time for our community to be part of 21st century programming so that the kids could have wraparound care. So that's something I'm particularly proud of. Another one is I was meeting with our teachers, our educators at Brody Middle School, and I was asking specifically around my son, but I was really kind of trying to drill into what I'd call bore out. I was having a hard time understanding why my son was coming home saying he was bored, why a lot of his friends were coming home and saying they were bored, and trying to kind of get at the root cause. And so what we discovered there is that this wasn't a Brody phenomenon. This was actually a middle school experience phenomenon. The amount of times that I heard from people in middle school of, well, you just need to survive middle school. made me very, very upset. And I think you need to be able to thrive in middle school. So what we did there is we put together, and we did it with the district leadership, we put together a parent advisory committee. We had members from every district within Des Moines, so every quadrant of the city was covered. And we asked ourselves, what are some of the gaps in middle school that we could fulfill? And what we're able to arrive at, and this was through a lot of collaboration with a lot of members of the community, is that there is ample funding if you find the right funding source. And in this case, it was advanced learning. We were able to add a significant amount of resources to middle school. And the win-win was my son no longer said he was bored, but there was a lot of kids that were able to be challenged and pushed to their potential.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have lots of time. We're about halfway through questions and
Okay.
so.
Can you provide an example of a difficult decision that you have made in a leadership role and how you approached it?
Yeah, I can. And thank you for the question. This one gets me nervously excited. It's kind of, it's fascinating, right? So when I was at Des Moines Public Schools, one of the first things when I was working here in the financial role, one of the first things that we were considering was, do we have our schools positioned in a manner where they're equitable? And one of the things that came out was we had a middle school that was actually in this building called Gateway Middle School that we found the cost per pupil was significantly higher than any of the other middle schools. And we could see a lot of the headwinds coming at that point in time with declining enrollment and things, and we knew we really need to be able to maximize our taxpayer dollars to the extent possible. So we started a lot of discussions in the community of what would it look like to close gateway schools. And that is one of the most difficult things I've been a part of. In those board meetings, I think I was sitting right there, I remember community members looking at me and going, you cook these books. I've been a CPA for 20 plus years. The one thing you don't do is you don't jeopardize your reputation, you don't jeopardize your competency. And so what I did in that scenario is I had a parent who was very upset, rightfully so, that was their child and their experience. We sat down with them and we went through every single number and we went through every single model and we got them to the point where they might not have agreed with Gateway. I'm sure they're still not happy to this day, but at least they understood why we were coming at it from the angle we were coming, which was based on data-driven decisions with a financial lens towards it. It was really hard. I remember having a lot of difficult nights, but it was the right thing at that time for the district. And when I think about what's facing us as a district, especially with the work on reimagining education, that's coming full circle. And so we need to be able to have some really, really critical conversations about what is our footprint within the community. How do we get the impact? And you guys have already done great work on being able to do your listening tours. How do we make sure that the input's there? And are we making the right decision for not only the current Des Moines Public School students, but the next generations that are going to come through our halls as well?
Thank you.
How do you plan to balance the needs and interests of District 4 stakeholders while making decisions that are in the best interest of all students?
Yeah, this question gets me really excited. This is me excited as a finance person, so I apologize that I don't like juggle or do anything terribly entertaining. But what gets me really excited about this is I think we are on the cusp of being able to do things that are pretty amazing. And what I mean by that is District 4 is an area of growth within Des Moines proper. It's an area where we can do some pretty creative things to hopefully turn around the declining enrollment trend. And we might be able to do that in a different model than we've been doing at Des Moines Public Schools by using pilot approaches. A big thing that the district has tried to enforce throughout the organization is that every single school looks and feels and there's the same experience. At least that was the case a few years ago. I think every single school needs to have a unique feel, a unique vibe, and ensure that the kids really are in an environment where they can challenge and push themselves. So if we've got some really good ideas that we think could differentiate ourselves from our suburban counterparts, especially on the south side, to bring some of those open enrollment out, children and families back into the district, I think we should try it. And I think by doing that, we evidence that District 4 is a part of a larger system. And when there's things that work in District 4, we're going to do it throughout the whole enterprise, throughout the whole district. But we need to start somewhere, and we need to not be afraid of doing some things that are innovative. And I do think District 4 is prime for being able to be that pilot.
Thank you.
How will you ensure transparency and accountability in your role as a school board member?
So I put out there for the whole world to see 20, 22, something like that, recommendation letters. And I just asked people, would you be willing to write something nice about me? Because I'm going to put myself out here to fill a need that's a pretty significant, you're following a pretty significant presence. And so we want to make sure we're set up for success and can continue on the trajectory. And if you read through those recommendation letters, a consistent theme from a lot of friends and colleagues is that I am very transparent. Sometimes too transparent. I am incredibly direct. I do come from the show me state. So I do believe in that I want to clearly articulate the why of what we're doing. Another thing that came out of those letters that I do believe and take pride in is if I say I'm going to get something done, we're going to get something done. Now we're going to have fun doing it, but we're going to turn it into an actionable item. We're going to hold each other accountable. We're going to make sure it gets taken care of. The other thing, and probably the most important reason why I believe in transparency and accountability, is my wife is a very strong, independent woman. If I don't behave in a transparent and accountable manner, I really like you guys. You seem like great people, but I want to be able to go home every night to my wife and have a really strong relationship for our family. I'm not going to be able to do that if I don't behave and model behavior that I really want my kids to be able to evidence every day in school and what I want the community to be able to see every day. I truly believe you've got to be able to listen to folks, express your ideals, and be very direct in your dialogue to be able to solve some of the problems and challenges that are facing us.
Thank you.
Can you share a time when you challenged status quo and whether it's in a previous role or in your current role? What was the situation? How did you approach it? And what was the outcome?
Yeah, I've had the privilege and I've been pretty fortunate to have some pretty cool roles within my career, whether that's in a community volunteer role or whether that's in a paid position. But one of my coolest experiences that I'm probably most proud of was my time being in a financial role at Des Moines Public Schools. And the reason why is there's 2 or 3 things that really stick out that I still carry with me every single day within the community. And the first one is, some of you probably know this, but there was a time 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago where free and reduced for students to be able to have a hot, nutritious meal every single day wasn't universal. It was based on strict income requirements. There was a whole lot of reviews that people put in place, and it was kind of, it was just really intense. One of the things that came out was the community eligibility program. And one of the things that I'm most proud with is I was able to collaborate with our head of nutrition at the time to really take an assessment and dive deep into what would it look like if we did this in our entire community? What would it mean to the outcomes and the experience of our students if they didn't have to worry about lunch? That then led to what would it mean if they didn't have to worry about breakfast? That then led to what if they didn't have to worry about meals during the summer? And so something that just so many people in this country and the community take for granted, which is food insecurity, we were able to put things in place for every single kid within the community to not have to worry about, and it made really, really good financial sense for our district. So it was a win-win. So that's something I'm incredibly proud of. Another one that I'm really proud of is when I was in a financial role here at the district, we were not faced with, especially the last 4 or 5 years, we were faced with some pretty trying times financially, no different than what you still are in today. And there was a specific point in time when we had about a $24 million budget shortfall that we had to figure out, how are we going to reduce that? And so through the collaboration with my peers, we had some really, really cool conversations about how do we do this under one parameter, And that parameter is, we're not going to touch the classroom. We used to call it the teachers had the golden ticket. The one thing we did not want our teachers worried about was the potential that their job could be eliminated. We felt that that was going to be incredibly distracting to the educational outcomes for the kids, and it's not the right condition for our staff to be able to go through. So what we did is we looked at every single funding source that we had, and we recognized that our health benefits reserve was essentially overfunded. It had been overfunded for a few years, and we can put a path in place through some creative financing that was, full disclosure, perfectly legal, didn't do anything illegal, perfectly legal to be able to get here and fund that shortfall. So for several years in a row, even though our enrollment was declining, even though our state supplemental aid was not keeping up anywhere near inflation, which probably still sounds familiar, right? We were able to put places where the teachers felt as secure as they possibly could with the staffing in the district.
Thank you.
All right, final question. Do you have any final questions for us?
I do, yeah. I've got a couple, if you guys would be willing. One is, you know what you know now. You're sitting in the seat that I'm in now. What is one thing you wished you would have known coming into the district as a board member?
I think the newest person should go first.
Patrick?
Yeah, Patrick.
Don't call on me first.
We weren't kidding.
We can wait.
I think frequently out in the community we'll hear things like, oh, this is, a thankless job and you don't get enough credit for all you do. And I tend to disagree. I think it is one of the most fulfilling and jobs. It's one of the most difficult things I've ever done. However, it is incredibly thankful, and the connections that you make with community members, with teachers, staff, students, is incredibly rewarding. And just staying grounded in what's best for students and what's going to move the needle when it comes to our student outcomes is what's been most important for me.
Thank you.
I think mine is you will not be in the same room with other people that share the same passion for our students and our teachers. And I think everybody at this board table, we all live different lives, but we all have a couple things in common. And, the millions of emails that we get, but the millions of, not the millions, but the students, the amount of students that, that we take care of, and the families and the teachers that we take care of. I think that's rewarding. And, this is our future of Des Moines. I mean, I was born and raised here in Des Moines. 3 East High graduates, and a couple littles that are still going to be in Des Moines Public Schools, and I wouldn't be anywhere else. And that's one thing that I want my legacy to be here in Des Moines.
Thank you.
I think I will say that one of the hardest things for me, and this is not just in Des Moines Public Schools, it's probably at every school, is that it's not perfect.
Yeah.
And the email, the call of a parent desperately trying to advocate for their child because their child is not well emotionally, mentally, academically, those are really hard calls. And I think it's for deep empaths, of which I am, it just can weigh on you. Because if we're doing our job is to ask the superintendent to do his job. And it's just hard to pass that off because it may or may not, it'll get addressed. I don't know if it'll get solved. And it's just hard. It's hard as a parent to think about this could be my kid. And so I find that emotionally difficult.
One of the reasons that I decided that this was important work to do and decided to run for school board was because representation matters. And being in this seat, I knew that communities of color were not visible. They were present because we had them in school every day, but not visible. And if not visible, then not heard either. And I didn't understand the degree to which families of color needed to be elevated. I knew that was there, but this has really shed a tremendous light on how important it is.
Thank you.
Additional questions?
The only other one, so that one, with some of the stuff we're walking into and the gaps and things like that, if I was so fortunate enough to be picked. The other one is, what do you really enjoy? Like, what keeps you energized and engaged within the community and keeps you wanting to keep fighting the good fight? Because it's a significant uphill battle. You've got a lot of headwinds against you. You've got to advocate every single day. Why Des Moines is, I think, the best place. How do you do it? How do you keep yourself going?
So I think about today. Today I had the opportunity to spend 4 hours with a group of Des Moines staff around GLEAM, which is a framework that they are bringing into the district, and I wanted to learn more about it. And it was really fun to see excited, engaged educators. That's just a great feeling, right? And how much they appreciated just a school board member expressing interest. I think the other thing for me is I go to a lot of places and just say thank you. And it may not feel like a lot, but it's for people that often don't get thanked, it feels great to them.
I don't know. Okay. I feel like the best part is our board. I think we all really enjoy each other. And I'm so glad you hit on what we all have in common, which is the best for the district. And so, in a time where a lot of boards can be really polarized, I guess, or bring personal priorities to the board table, I don't think that's the case with our board and with our superintendent. And so I think what keeps me going is everyone who sits around the table.
And I will tell you, Jenna's really good, and so are other district representatives, at making it clear that you must have polar bear pride. I think there's a fun aspect to the pride that is brought from individual districts too.
I haven't forgotten about you, Patrick. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, I was just going to say on the first question, Nick, I would say, and I don't think this will be a surprise to you, but the time that you put into a board seat is, and I was told this before, but I don't think I had an understanding of just how much you can put a lot of time in. And I think one of the hardest things is making sure that you're still doing your day job and making sure you're still being with your family and all those things, because this is such important work and there is so much to do and so much to think about, and you want to do a good job. So I think the time is a big challenge if you put yourself into it. And I would just go with Jackie's answer about the best part about it is I love our district recognitions at the board meetings. I love learning about the things that Des Moines public school students are doing at a time when it's really easy to get down on public schools. It gives you such a great amount of faith in the kids that are going through our schools and then our future leaders. And I just that is. It takes a very short amount of time to fill up the tank on that stuff so that you can handle a lot of the headwinds that you talked about that are coming at us.
Thank you.
I would like to add that this is a board that is collaborative in the true spirit of collaboration, and we don't always agree. However, we do come to the table with open ears and a focus on continuous improvement. And we are constantly learning from each other on behalf of the students of Des Moines Public Schools. So it really is an honor to serve with this group of individuals. And again, on behalf of the students of Des Moines. So that's what keeps me.
You guys gave me goosebumps. Yeah. I appreciate that. I don't have any further questions at this point.
All right, thank you. We have an additional interview this evening, 3 additional interviews tomorrow evening, then deliberation, and we'll be making the final decision tomorrow. So you will, we'll let you know. And then if chosen, the swearing in will happen at our next regular business meeting, which is April 16th. So thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you for your interest.
And if you have any additional questions on anything that's out there, please don't hesitate to ask. I just really appreciate the time today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Guys.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for your interest. We have Patrick Dix joining us virtually, so he can hear us. All of our mics are on. We're all being recorded right now. We are going to take turns asking you the 10 questions that you've been provided in advance, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask us questions at the end. I will be keeping time, and I will just raise my hand at 5 minutes. So no need to stop, but just an indicator to you if you get to the 5-minute point on each question. Any questions before we start?
No.
Okay, if you'll go ahead and just state your name before we get started.
My name is Abena Sankofa Imhotep.
Thank you, Abena. Welcome. What motivated you to apply for the school board position?
Well, I'd like to start by giving my sincerest condolences to you all on the loss of a dear colleague and a force for good in our community. And certainly Terry's legacy and commitment is part of the inspiration for me wanting to apply for this school board position. But not only that, my application stems from a deep passion for education and my work with students in the district already, and really just wanting to broaden that impact in a positive way on an institutional level.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for being here today with us. What do you feel are the largest challenges facing our school district, and how will your appointment to the school board help the board in addressing these challenges?
Certainly, there are a number of challenges that a school district the size of ours faces that are unique to our district. And the list goes on and on. I think the 3 major challenges that we face are, number one, the budget constraints, having to do the job that is charged to us with fewer and fewer financial resources is certainly a challenge, along with safety. 10 years ago, I can't tell you, well, maybe even 20 years ago, I can't tell you that would have been a number one concern, but it is now. Safety is a huge challenge facing our district, as well as the academic achievement gap and disparities in student outcomes, namely math and literacy. And so I think my background in literacy advocacy, number one, would lend itself really nicely to helping grasp the scope of the disparity that we face and mining those guardrails and being able to hold the superintendent accountable to those. And then as well as my background in diversity, equity, and inclusion, knowing that we have the most diverse district in the state is a wonderful thing. And I think I've heard you all and others say that that diversity is our superpower, and certainly it is. But what our kryptonite has been is the inability to understand the value of inclusion. And so I think that perspective is needed on the board, and I know that I could bring that, as well as overall a fresh perspective, being able to ask the tough questions and help with strategic decision-making.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much for being here. Great to see you. Question number 3 is, how do you plan to collaborate with other board members and community members to make informed decisions?
Well, I thought about this question, and it really sat with me for a time, because I understand the essential nature of collaboration and what it means to be a part of a team. This is a task that is certainly larger than any single one of us. And I understand that there isn't one singular knowledge holder in any room. We all bring things valuable to the table as board members. My favorite author, one of my favorite authors, is Maya Angelou, who says that I come as one, but I stand as 10,000. And to me, I interpret that to mean that the spirit of collaboration has to be a part of our individual ethos and our cultural ethos as a group. So in terms of working with you all, I think what I could bring to the table is the ability to listen, and not just your average everyday listening, but listening to understand, listening with the intention to ask the tough and strategic questions, ensuring the well-being of our district and student success, and then willing to be a helping hand in that subcommittee work, which is where the magic actually happens. With our community members and our stakeholders, I think it's important to build consensus and find common ground. We all come from various aspects and life experiences, and so in the community, especially in District 4, there are so many variables on the south side. It makes it so beautiful, but being able to find those common grounds that we could build consensus on, as well as drawing from the expertise that's within District 4. There's a ton of expertise and wealth of information that human resources is critically important. So using all of that to collaborate, I think, is one of the strengths that I have.
Thank you.
Abena, what do you see as the role of a school board member in holding the superintendent accountable for achieving the goals while honoring our guardrails?
So I attended the training the other week. It was so informative and really helped to inform all of us about the role of a board member in relationship to the superintendent. And he has, that person, whoever is in that role, has a tremendous monumental task in front of them, dealing with 4,700 people on his team. However, the board has one person with which to work with and to hold accountable. And so understanding that our lane is making sure that he is well-informed of the expectations. The expectations for him are clear, and that he has the ability to be creative and innovative in accomplishing the tasks set before him, which are the goals set by the board. And being willing to hold him accountable in ways that are that actually build relationship and build community, I think is important. Formative assessments are a strategy that I am a fan of, and what that is having conversations intermittently with the understanding that the goal is to learn from whatever concerns and issues arise. And so if that happens on a regular basis, then at the time where there is a formal assessment, then there has been time for the superintendent to work out all of the details that have been happening along the way. So keeping those conversations open, regular, and that the expectations are clear. And again, that spirit of collaboration and working with the superintendent are critically important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maria, I think you're, okay.
How do you, thank you. How do you, and thank you for being here. How do you envision engaging with parents, students, and community stakeholders to ensure their voices are heard in the decision-making process?
Well, this is something that I am not a stranger to. In the work that I've done with students around literacy, it's been important and absolutely essential to engage and galvanize parents and teachers and staff and administration around the goals and making sure that students are achieving and feel confident in what they're doing. But while making sure that the students and stakeholder voices are heard, it's a two-way street. And that's what I've learned, is that it's a two-way street. So I guess I'll begin with what I'm going to do. What I would do is encourage parents, students to be engaged at the school level. Under all circumstances, yes, it is appropriate for parents, stakeholders, and students to be engaged at the school level. Join the PTA. What a powerful force they are. Join a parents advisory committee. I was a part of the parents advisory committee when my kids were district learners, 3 generations going in my family, including myself and my children in the Des Moines Public School District. And using their voices and collaborating with people in the school, I think that is so powerful when stakeholders, students, and parents engage that way. I'd also encourage them, an equity-focused engagement. That's my promise, is that I would prioritize equity and efforts that reach marginalized student groups and families. That is one way to ensure that all voices are being heard, is that equity-focused engagement. And then transparency in decision-making is absolutely critical, particularly in District 4 and in a district as a whole, the size of ours. It's imperative that our students, our families, understand what the processes are for decision-making, what the timelines are, what the outcomes are, and ways that they can be involved. So those are ongoing conversations that I'd intend to have with students and their families. And then again, encouraging them to be present as well. So we're meeting in the middle.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a follow-up, if that's okay. Abena, you mentioned the equity-focused engagement in reaching marginalized populations. This is something that the board has tried to include in our work during our community engagement process. Can you speak a little bit more to how you feel that you can bring that strength to the table?
Absolutely. So again, as I stated earlier, my background involves diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of my work centers equity because diversity is something that is really obvious in most instances. You can look around a room and tell whether or not it is diverse. However, equity is not so obvious. So it's about making sure that mechanisms are in place that ensure fairness in all processes. Whoever is missing, that's who we need to pursue. All the other people who are at the table, yes, they have an opportunity to be heard. But those who are not at the table, seeking them out, having them be informed about ways to be involved, and really making a concerted effort, particularly in District 4, using neighborhood associations. I live in the Indianola Hills neighborhood, and it's a very vibrant community there. But there are some neighborhoods on the south side that are not as active. And so reaching out to those leaders, and if there aren't leaders, finding leaders, identifying them, and saying, hey, there's an opportunity for you to contribute to actionable insights that could really help move our district forward.
Thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to extend that question. Am I next? Sorry. Can you provide an example of a difficult decision that you've had to make in a leadership role, and how did you approach that decision?
So this is another question that I had to sit with, because in leadership, there are no shortages of difficult decisions that we have to make. And then I thought about the fact that not all difficult decisions are bad ones. The most positive outcomes come from scrutiny and critical thinking and employing multiple sets of eyes and ears on a situation that could be difficult, but we're better together. I truly believe that. So I was a board trustee for a higher educational institution, and we were tasked with just a contentious issue of allocation of funds for co-curricular activities. And so there was intense debate in the community. There were opinions on both sides, and we were dealing with limited resources. So the beauty of this difficult decision is that it was one that I did not have to make on my own. I was a part of a group, and so the strength comes in being able to work through those situations. So we did employ what I'd like to call a 3D approach to decision-making. The first D is data collection. So we gathered data around the current allocations and all of the variables that go into that, many different things such as participation rates and student achievement and such. And then along those lines, we also analyzed the data. So there was some cost-benefit analysis and other things. The second D that we engaged in was dialogue. So not only did we have robust conversations among ourselves, but we facilitated community conversations and got input from stakeholders. We wanted to know their perspectives and that they were valued in this process. Out of those conversations emerged alternatives. So that led us to the final D, which was decision-making, evaluating all of the options around those alternatives. So what are the trade-offs for each option? And then making the decision. That's where we made the decision. And by the time we made the decision, based on the data that we had and the analysis following that, and looking at all of the dialogue that we had among ourselves and community members and stakeholders, we were able to make a well-informed decision. And our decision ended up being that we would fund co-curricular activities that demonstrated the greatest impact on student achievement, well-being, learning outcomes, fiscal responsibility, and equitable access. Of course, we had to say no to some things, but the yeses that we were able to say yes to were they demonstrated the greatest impact in a positive way for the student population. And then the final part of that was being able to communicate that decision to the community, to the stakeholders and students, and communicate it in a respectful way, because respect goes a long way, I've learned, with transparency, and then giving them the opportunity to continue the dialogue with us during the implementation period.
Thank you.
This is this one, right?
It is.
how do you plan to balance the needs and interests of District 4 stakeholders while making decisions that are in the best interest of all students?
Thank you for that question. When I read that question, I immediately thought of raising my children and having to balance the needs of each one of those and how difficult it was at times, but being able to do it well and how successful it turned out being. There were times when I weren't sure, but we had good outcomes for all three of them. But certainly understanding that District 4, Southside pride is a real thing. It is, but it presents differently by neighborhood, and understanding the unique needs of each part of District 4, and listening and gathering the diverse perspectives that exist there is so important. And there's, again, back to common ground. There are things that we can all agree on across the district, across the entire school district. We can agree that we want improved student outcomes. We all want that. We can agree that we want the best possible well-being for our district. So with that in mind, keeping an equity lens on making sure that fairness is first, and advocating for all students. I'm a believer that a rising tide lifts all boats. And yes, there are flaws with that argument, but the overarching idea of it is true. We have very unique needs in District 4. Many neighborhoods, the actual zip code that I live in is 50315, and the majority of that zip code is at the poverty line or below. And so as an avid reader, one of the books that I've read is called Poverty by America by Michael Desmond. And in it, he said, "Poverty is not a line, it is a tight knot of social maladies." So understanding that and how that impacts the ability to represent the people in District 4, and while understanding that there are similar maladies across the district, I think that that balance and informed decision-making and advocating for all students would go far. I'm looking at each of you, not remembering who asked the question, so, yeah.
Your eye contact is wonderful.
How will you ensure transparency and accountability in your role as a school board member?
Well, I mean, honesty is number one. Understanding that being honest with the people that I represent is the most important thing. And being able to communicate their concerns and vision and values builds this culture of trust in the district, in District 4. So being willing to ask tough questions on their behalf, and then being honest in going back to them with whatever the outcomes or answers are to their questions. I am a proponent of establishing open lines of communication and making myself accessible. I am not hard to find. Giving people access to me as a resource and a representative is important to me, while understanding that I will not have all of the answers. And there may be times when I don't have the ability, like literally, to answer the question. So knowing that I can refer them to our superintendent, to another board member, to staff within the district, I think that will help with the transparency and accountability, along with understanding effective governance. I've served on a number of boards and have found that that way of serving the community is so important, and it's a huge task, but it's one that, if done well, if we follow our own rules, then the transparency is built into that. And that's something that I appreciate.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, is it me? We changed.
keep
Jenna
changing
changed
orders.
our, that's okay. Yeah, okay. Can you share a time when you challenged the status quo in a previous role? What was the situation, your approach, and the outcome?
The situation was, I noticed in 2020, I believe that I was online. I might have my year wrong, but I was online.
It's all a blur.
It is all a blur. After 2020, I'm like, what day is it? So I noticed there were some statements online on the district website, actually, about literacy rates for Black boys. And so it became clear to me that whatever the status quo was not working. Whatever, it might have been instruction, it might have been a lot of things I didn't know at that point. But I did know that in my capacity as a literacy advocate and a champion for children, that perhaps we could make an impact. And so I set out on a fact-finding mission, talking to parents, some little kids, teachers, and some colleagues that I have in the community. And I'm like, okay, what is the issue? Why can't our kids read? What is going on that prevents Black boys from reading at grade level? And we had robust conversations online. It was Zoom. It was amazing to get that many people on several Zoom conversations so early. But out of those conversations, I realized that in order to do something impactful that works, that makes a difference, I would have to do something different. And so I began to write, with the help of a few of my teacher friends, write a curriculum for an after-school literacy program intended to mitigate the disparity that Black boys and the achievement gap that Black boys were facing and dealing with. A few things happened after that. We set forth, a small group of team and I set forth on this journey to figure out what school we would go to. And we found one school who was open to the idea. So I knew that because it was something new, sometimes new things are met with resistance, but I found one school in District 3, Stowe Elementary. They were really receptive. And the principal allowed me to come after school 5 days a week for 2 hours, from 3 to 5, and work with the 12 lowest performing students in the school who were in 3rd and 4th grade. My assumption, based on the research and everything that I've learned, my assumption was that I would have 12 little Black boys in my after-school program. What surprised me was that it was the most diverse group of students: Latino students, Black students, Asian students, white students, boys and girls, the 12 lowest performing students in 3rd and 4th grade. So I created a small staff, intergenerational Black women, to go after school and work with these students. And the status quo had been, for a lot of programs, go into the school and read to the kids. We decided that not only would we read with them, that we would introduce a culturally responsive framework that included hands-on activities and things that interested them. In the first 90 days of that program, all of the students' confidence increased. They were willing to read out loud. And I don't know when the last time you all were in the classroom were, but for a kid who has not read at grade level to read out loud, that's a big deal. They were all willing to read out loud. By the end of the program, we started in January, we started in December, and then we ended in May of the school year, so the end of the school year. All of our students, all 12 of them, had shown significant improvement in their literacy testing. 3 of them tripled their FAST test scores. That let me know that we were on the right track. The critical importance of literacy and academic achievement, and that collaborating with families, because we did have the families involved. We communicated with parents, aunts, uncles, grandmas, whoever was picking up kids. We communicated with them and asked them to read to the children at home. All of these things work. And pushing against the status quo is hard, but it's necessary. And so it was work that we were willing to do. It's work that it's probably one of the proudest moments of my life, was having a little graduation ceremony for them at the end of the school year and sending them home with books for the summer.
Thank you.
I'm working toward a world where all children love to read.
Lastly, what questions do you have for us?
I do have one question. I thought about this for quite a long time. And my question to you all is, what are the essential characteristics that you hope to have in your next board member? And how do you believe that my experience and expertise could meet those expectations?
So I'll go first with the qualities of a board member, and we're all probably different. Relentless is a word. I've been known to call it healthy impatience, relentless, fierceness, fight. I think the work's really, really, really hard, and it's systems work, and it's not fast. And so some fortitude and strength to understand that, but not stop. That's really important to me personally. I think the second thing is a knowledge and an understanding of our superpower, and figuring out how to harness that to turn us into the best school district in the state.
I think that it's really important to see children not for how we see them right now, but for what they're called to be. And I don't think that we see that. I don't think that we do a good job of treating children that way. So actually having a vision. I love your statement about working toward having every child just love to read.
Thank you.
This is Patrick Dix. I would say collaboration is the skill that I've come to really value in this group. Everybody comes with a spirit of collaboration, and I think we all understand that we are better together. And so that's I think the quality. And just sitting here listening to you, if I win the lottery tomorrow night, you can expect several tens of millions of dollars to become our literacy czar. I mean, I just like your passion for literacy is just outstanding, and I wish I had an unlimited checkbook to write to you to give you the resources that you need. Anybody with your passion for reading is just has a really great focus. I love that.
Thank you.
You better call him too.
Yeah.
He can write you a small check.
Even if he doesn't win the lottery. But I don't think, for the record, he does not have the power to hire you as a literacy
We
czar.
cannot do that.
We do not have that power.
That I do
I'm making
understand.
my own with the lottery money, Jackie. I'm making my own with
Lottery.
the lottery money.
We'll go through the foundation. I think that I am hopeful that we have someone who, can come jump on board and have the confidence to start asking hard questions day one. I think you hit the nail on the head of what our ultimate job as a board is to manage one person and do it by setting the most clear expectations and having the highest measures of accountability we can, because it's ultimately going to trickle down, right? And so finding someone who can come on and is ready to help in that continued sort of as we continue to build out our points of accountability and prioritize the work for our superintendent in district. And I think you have so many qualities that would add value to this board. Obviously, thank you for sharing about the work you did at Stowe. What was like music to my ears was that you brought forth that it can't just happen in our school day alone. And I am not a literacy czar, but my own child, right, who is in a reading group, and you have to read. I have to read more at home with her. I have to push her. It's not just going to happen in her classroom, and it doesn't just happen in her 20 minutes of reading group every day. It's my responsibility too. And they have to tell me that, and I sit at this table. And so I think we need to do a better job of having our community be a part of the solution. So I just really appreciate you having that lived experience, that real life example to those things I think are invaluable to what we bring just from our own personal thoughts, right? You have some expertise in that area. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I just put some words down on paper. So collaboration, understanding of everybody in our district, parents, teachers, students, advocating for our parents and especially our students, our younger ones, a lot of our students that want to learn to read. And you've done that at Stowe. And just coming to the board and new ideas that you have. Like I said before, outside of here, we probably don't have much in common, but one common thread that we have is our passion for our students and our families and our teachers here in the district. So,
Thank you.
I do just want to lift up what Patrick said and Anna has said. It was that I think it's Patrick's right. We do all work really well together because we all have the same end goal. And I think we all have a lot of respect for one another. And so just something plug for ourselves, I guess. And some people say, what am I walking into? A really good group.
Yeah.
A really good group.
Yeah, we're the best.
Has a lot of respect for each other.
And so humble too.
No, we have respect we respect each other and we do work really well together.
Modest.
Do you have any other questions that you want to ask?
No, I
Because
don't.
you have time if you want to.
I do have time?
Yes.
As far as representing the school board in public, in my past board service experiences, the public-facing conversations were the responsibility of the chair to speak for the group. Is that the case here? Would individual board members ever be asked to represent the board publicly speaking?
I'd love for other people to answer that because I think I know what the answer is. So, but I want to make sure before I say.
I think
Clearly, we have a policy.
We do have board policy around what that looks like, and we all do our best to follow it. Ultimately, we are all individual board members. We all have a vote. Not one of us has any additional or increased level of power. So yes, we have a board chair and a board vice chair, but that role does not give individuals any additional or increased level of power over the board. So we all have an equal vote. We are ultimately, once a decision is made, it is the will of the board, and then we all will speak with the will of the board, and our policy, speaks to our 7 votes come together in one voice, ultimately, once that vote is taken. There is a bit of nuance when it comes to media requests, PR requests, those sorts of things. There's that goes to the board chair and vice chair to speak on behalf of the board, but ultimately there's check-ins and things like that to make sure that the chair is speaking on behalf of the will of the board.
Phew, that's the answer I thought it was going to be. Yeah, and I'd add two things. I think the checking in part is really important because there are times when you have to represent the board and making sure you actually understand it and feel confident in it. That's really important. That's a quality you should look for in leadership. I think what I also want to say, though, is one of the things that we all have in common is getting out in the community. It's just untapped opportunity to go out and talk about the school district, the kids, how amazing they are, all the things that DMPS is doing well. And that is fair game for everybody to get out there and tell that story. I think the nuance sometimes is in the Q&A. In such a large district, I would love to fix every problem of every parent when they come to you and tell you to fix it. And that's just not our job. Our job is to help them navigate the system to get to a successful outcome, right? And always be their backstop and their ally if they feel like their needs are not getting addressed through the school system. But it can be difficult when you have, you're out in the community and people think that every decision was your decision. And it's a fine line, right? Because some of these things are operational decisions that the superintendent makes. And our trust is in the superintendent to make the right operational decisions.
And I think as a board, when it comes to we get a lot of emails. And I think Jackie's really good, and Maria, and I think all of us is really good, is just communicating between us before Jackie sends a mass email or is responding to a lot of these emails that we see are about the same subject. She does email us and say, hey, this is a draft. What do you guys think? What do we need to tweak? And that's good communication right there between all of us. So I think that's a positive thing, that there's good open communication.
And I would just add from my perspective, the way I would articulate it is it's about respect. And the first is respect for the board process. You are a member of the board. And so, as others have said, when we make a decision, I think that has to be honored. But I think there is also respect for disagreement and differing perspectives, certainly. And so I think there is always that ability at the end of the day, if a different opinion needs to be voiced in the community. But I think there's so much collaboration in how we communicate to our constituency as a board that it really makes it, I think, easy for everyone to get behind that communication and present that voice of the board.
And I would just challenge one point Kim made, which is that the chair and the vice chair while we all have equal votes, the chair and the vice chair do have more power. I mean, they do set the agenda and ultimately decide what's discussed at the board table. And there is a way for you to change what they set for the agenda. But there are some powers that you have as chair and vice chair.
Yeah, and just, I think,
go ahead.
I think that's right. And maybe to
The
add to
roles.
that, there's two things. One, on a regular basis, every other week, generally basis, we do a call with the superintendent.
The chair and the vice
CFO.
chair.
The chair and the vice chair. I think if we're doing our job well, we're sharing all of that with the board members. The other thing that I would say that's a positive is, and I think we're continually reinforcing it, Dr. Roberts does have an open door policy.
100%.
And so, trying to both respect his time, but also acknowledge that everybody should build individual relationships. I think he actually values that relationship process.
And then I would say that there's no restrictions on kind of where we go or what we do as board members. I think it's always great the more we can show up and the more we can be out. As Patrick has said, it's a lot of time to serve. Basically block out every Tuesday plus every Tuesday night. So you give a lot, and people will want you at a lot of places, and so you want to do all of that. And anytime there's a hard question, I think the answer just always is, I'm one of 7, right? I mean, I can give my opinion, but ultimately it's up to 7 people to decide. We don't have any individual power, which kind of gives a little, that's just honest as well, and just kind of keeps everyone in the same message, all along the same lines.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And my third question was answered, because that was how much communication and time is spent with the superintendent and what that looks like. And so, Jackie, you answered that. I just want to say thank you all for the opportunity to chat and to answer the questions. And I look forward to Thursday.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thanks for coming in.
We have,
Thanks, sidekick.
you are the last interview of this evening. We have 3 additional interviews tomorrow, which will be followed by deliberation and decision by the board. So we will, it will be a late decision, but we will know tomorrow night the decision, and then the individual that is selected for this vacancy will be sworn in at our next business meeting, which is April 16th. So thank you for your interest and applying for this vacancy. We are grateful for your time this evening and your interest.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, I will collect all of your
Box if you want.
notes and bring them back tomorrow for,
Hey, Patrick, are you still on?
Patrick,
I
are
am.
you still, oh, yeah.
Yeah. He has a topic he wants to discuss,
Do you want
think.
the blank ones also? Or
I'm just leaving my
keep this
blank ones here.
Down here?
I would like you to take those with, because they have the rubric on them. and-
Oh, okay, got it. I think, Patrick, do you want to elevate what you texted?
Yeah, is it appropriate to do that? I just didn't know if we could do that. I know all of us are here, but I just didn't know if we were able to. It's germane to what we're doing, and it's time sensitive,
It's
so.
about the deliberation process.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'd like at least a discussion about a motion to go into closed session to deliberate, and I have a couple of reasons for that. When I heard Jackie read the actual statute last night, when we went into closed session, I'm concerned about, I think we've had great candidates, and this is going to be a really difficult decision. I am concerned about a healthy deliberation being seen or perceived as a negative on any of these candidates. And I don't think that would be our intent, but I think that it could be taken that way by the public. And then I would further say some of these candidates may run in 18 months again, and it's not this board's job to vote the Southside candidate in. And I don't want to have the perception that there is an endorsement of any kind of any one candidate. So is there a way that we could have a closed session, but do a further discussion in public? I want the transparency, but I am concerned about the effect it may have on an election.
I do not believe that there is code that would allow us to go into closed session for this, Patrick. I can certainly check with Miriam, but to my knowledge, we do not have that ability. What also would present concern is we would have to get it posted, even if there is statute that would allow that, it would have to be posted within the next 15 minutes with a 24-hour posting. So
Kim, the statute says, Section I says, to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment hiring or performance or discharge is being considered.
That is referring to the
When-
superintendent hour one employee.
Competency of an individual who's being appointed. I think that's plain language. We are, as a board, appointing this individual to this position. When necessary to
I will
prevent
check with
needless and
Miriam. I do
irreparable
not
injury.
believe that your interpretation of that is applicable to this particular situation, but I will certainly check with Miriam.
Okay. And I just, the only reason I lift it up is because I have some serious concerns about a robust discussion. I don't want it to be harmful to any of these candidates. We have 6 really good candidates for this position.
Quick question.
Jackie is on the phone with Miriam right now. And I will say, I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or otherwise, but the previous appointment processes have all deliberated in public, all live streamed. So we will follow up with Miriam's information with the whole board, and it looks like she may have an answer right now.
Jackie got a quick decision.
So, 2 things. She said if we wanted to do it, we'd have to get a consent from each of the board the people that expressed interest. Her second comment was questioning the transparency of the process. So I think let's just see where board members are and how they're feeling about Patrick's suggestion.
I would not be in support of a closed session.
Who's calling?
Oh, that's me. Sorry.
No, recording this?
No. Well, yes, this is still being recorded.
I will go with the will of the board.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable going into closed session for transparency purposes. I do really appreciate what you're bringing. It's going to be hard, right? It's hard to have that type of deliberation, which is why I think it's great that we have rubric, because I think that grounds our conversation in. I think it keeps our conversation on the right track. I hear you. It's hard, but if you think about it, there's not an election, and an election is the public opportunity to vet a candidate, and so I think it seems like the right and transparent thing to do for the public to understand the vetting process as much as possible.
So Kim, because you were the last one, right, in this situation?
Correct.
Was there a backlash before or during, or was it just smooth
It was
transition?
public.
It was a public, there were 18 applicants and there were 5 or 6
Like, I watched
candidates
them
interviewed.
deliberate.
Jackie and I
Yeah,
were both
Kim did too.
interviewed. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, Jackie
You were
and I
one of the-
were
you both were
top 2
finalists?
Yeah.
candidates.
Yeah,
I
she beat
think.
me.
There were 3 top candidates in it.
I think I knew that, but I forgot that.
Yeah, so I had to listen to people talk about me.
And
But it
here
was-
you are at the board
Yeah,
table.
I mean, it was positive. Here's the thing. It's kind of awkward because you're like, this is a little awkward, but it wasn't petty or personal. It was.
Yeah, I do think that we have improved the process since then
Yes.
in creating a rubric, because I do think that in observation of the previous process, it was not necessarily objective in nature or 100% objective. So,
Anna and Maria, I'm not sure did you?
I say no to a closed session.
I think just for transparency, if that's kind of what we're trying, not kind of, if that's what we're trying to do, I think that we need to not be in closed session.
Then maybe one other question on that is, we all want to make sure to avoid walking quorum. Just a reminder, right, as to.
yeah, this cannot be discussed or deliberated until we are completed with interviews tomorrow evening. So no conversation between board colleagues between now and then.
Okay, so turn in the rubrics.
I-
and- Bye,
I
Patrick.
appreciate I
Thank
appreciate
you.
the conversation, and I wanted to bring it up. I'm struggling with it too. I want it to be a transparent process.
It's a
But
good point,
I'm
though.
Yeah.
It was good,
unintended
Patrick.
consequences.
Appreciate you
I
bringing
think
it up.
I just want to hope you have some faith in, Kim and Maria and I thought really hard about these questions. We created the rubric, there's the,
The rubric is not yet public, no.
okay. Well, I feel like we created the rubric, having been through just recently, going through the superintendent search and really feeding off of a lot of things we learned from that process. And so I feel like all of the tools are here, and I think we just need to be really thoughtful about using them and being prepared for the conversation.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I would like to add that, the slate of candidates that we have, I feel, are all exceptional. And I want to do everything in our power to continue to keep all 6 of these individuals engaged in our work in some way, shape, or form. Anyone who is showing a desire to sit at this table, I think, is a true asset and to our community. And I think we as a board, should do what we can to keep engagement from all candidates.
Well
do
said.
have
That should be
one-
a follow-up action of our committee, maybe even of thinking
Agreed.
about that, because I don't know if they tried anything with the 18 of you that applied. Obviously, 2 of you are here now, which is great.
But no, they didn't.
But we should, let's think about that. The 3 of us take that on of how do we be intentional about keeping everyone engaged in Des Moines Public Schools. Good point.
I do have one question about the process. So after we're done with our interviews tomorrow, what's the process itself? Is it just a numerical, like how do you see it?
Individual board members will take moments of reflection, note-taking, identifying, each of the questions has a scale. So identifying the scale score for each of the questions, coming up with a final score. We will then come up with a ranking and discuss the candidates based on that ranking. Do you want anything additional to that, or?
No, I think maybe just because some people weren't in the superintendent process, we all are potentially likely to have some different scoring, right? And so there's a little bit of, okay, we each have our maybe top 3, but then conversations.
You mean leading it? Like, are we going to go through and, is that how you're envisioning it?
Well, I'm asking. I guess I'm just trying to understand. So we'll have just say our list in ranked order.
Correct.
Then-
Yep, based on the scale scores and the rubrics that we will all come together and have one final score per applicant. And then that is going to identify the conversation that we have, depending on, if it's the top 2, we discuss the top 2. If, the top 3 scores are all very close, we discuss the top 3.
Got it.
I think it's hard to say, if all of them are within 1 point of each other, then it's going to be a much longer conversation.
That's
But,
helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
yeah, I
understand now.
I would say we are going to discuss the candidates based on where the scores fall. And that might be 2 or it might be 6.
Great. Thank you for that feedback.
And then are you gonna send Ruth that other question?
Yes, so it was my error. I had a duplicate question on our questionnaire, and as a result, missed asking Ruth one of our questions. So I will send her that and request written feedback and provide that to the entire board.
Great.
It's that baby brain.
This was very smooth. Thank you. Thank you to our committee. Thank you, Kim, for just getting us to this place.
Yeah, and we'll
Okay.
see everybody back at 5 tomorrow.
Yep. Kyle is in the other room, so he'll turn off the video officially now.